well? Katryna, Odelia, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Just waiting for people to come in and we can start. Great. Excellent. Let's start. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. We have a few people coming in as we speak, but because we don't want to delay this episode anymore, let's get started. The first thing I must say before we start is just a gentle reminder to anyone who is listening to us that digital assets are indeed subjected to very high market risk and price volatility. This means that the value of your investments might go up as well as down, and you might not get back the amount invested, and you're solely responsible for your investment decisions. The conversation taking place here today do not constitute investment advice of any kind, and we are not going to make any recommendation to trade any digital assets in the next few hours or minutes. So just please bear in mind. And with this disclaimer made, we are finally ready to start. First of all, to all ladies who are listening to us, to this episode, big thank you for joining. We want you all to be part of this celebration, this Women's International Month. And throughout the webinar, feel free to share your thoughts on the chat. The chat is open for everyone. So if anyone have questions, please do drop them there. I'm going to try to make a quick Q&A at the end of the panel, so we all have the opportunity to share our thoughts. All in all, I'm very thrilled to moderate this panel. It's going to be an outstanding one, outstanding professionals here, very well known. Pretty much everyone in the industry knows them, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves one by one. Odelia, perhaps you would like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Michaela. It's a pleasure being here today, and thank you for having me. My name is Odelia Torteman. I've been working on the fields of digital assets and financial technologies for the last, I would say, 12 years, from both investment perspective, technology and strategy, consulting, and operational management. For the last 3.5 years, I've been with IFC, which is the private sector investment arm of the World Bank Group. Over there, I serve as a global digital finance individual, takes care of all kinds of developing ventures and digital finance-based projects around the world. Beforehand, I spent 5 years with Deloitte, where I've led the fintech and the blockchain arm under the technology consulting perspective. Also did a lot of work with a lot of institutions. And beforehand, I was with the EU technology framework program, supporting all kinds of integrations of players. Very excited to be here. Big fan of digital assets and fintech, and looking forward for our discussions. Thank you.
Katryna, would you like to go next?
Yes, of course. Thanks so much, Michaela, for hosting us today. So my name is Katryna Hanush. I'm Managing Director of Business Development and Partnerships, which means facing all of our counterparties externally at Wintermute. Wintermute is one of the largest trading firms in the world in crypto, spot, and derivatives. I've been with Wintermute for over 2 years, and prior to that, I spent years working for large financial institutions and banks and hedge funds. I worked at UBS, Credit Suisse, State Street, and so I was on the buy side, sell side, always in sales and trading. So very excited to have moved in crypto. It's a very, very exciting space to be. So yeah, very glad to be here today. Thank you.
And Oya, finally.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here. So my name's Oya. I'm sales director at Jacobi Asset Management. Jacobi issued Europe's first Bitcoin ETF in August 2023. Before Jacobi, I was at a company called Copper, who are crypto custodian for institutions. And before that, kind of similar to Katryna, I spent 15 years at big, mostly conservative, mostly American investment banks, including Lehman Brothers, Jefferies, and Morgan Stanley, always on client-facing side, mainly in prime brokerage. And yeah, I was at an event last week where someone shared with personal details, so I'll end with that as well. So I'm originally Turkish. I've been living in London for 16 years, and I have 2 small kids as well. That's it.
Great, great, great. Well, we have a combination of a bit of everything, I will say, in this school, and this is why the conversation will be so exciting. And based on those diverse backgrounds, again, from banking to asset management, market making, sales, could you please, each of you, provide a little bit of an intro to your own stories? How did you start in the industry? What motivations led you choose a career in this particularly space? What was the main reason? Why do you say, okay, I want to work in digital assets?
Shall I start? We'll do the reverse order this time. So my first interest was in cryptography. I did my master's in cryptography, but this was over 10 years ago, so before I knew anything about blockchain. And then when I was working in prime brokerage, I was quite annoyed by the inefficiencies, ranging from client onboarding, KYC, to sorting out trade breaks, payment fails, SWIFT system issues. So it just seemed all very archaic for, one of the best prime brokerage houses with the best technology in Wall Street. And I could see how blockchain technology could help make those changes and make the whole process a lot more efficient. And that's the reason why I got into it, really. I wanted to understand more of the technology and help be a part of the change in terms of merging traditional capital markets and digital assets. And on the other side, the crypto market infrastructure also had and still has a lot of issues. And I kind of wanted to use my experience from traditional finance to help make that change, but also help use blockchain technology to make the changes on the other side of things.
Katryna?
Yes, I'll go next. Yeah, I'll admittedly I was quite late to crypto and the whole ecosystem. So my story starts. I did psycholinguistics and finance. I'm originally from Belarus. So when I moved to London, it was easier to find a job in finance. There were a lot of grad programs, and I joined structured derivatives desk. And throughout my career, I would always be switching teams or switching roles every 2-3 years. I worked on the private banking side, on the structured derivative side, and I moved into precious metals desk. I was only precious lady among 90 men globally. Then I moved into electronic FX, and I worked for for Venue, our electronic ECN. So in 2021, during the bull run, I started getting approached by a few kind of prominent names in crypto, and I realized that I'm going to be a complete dinosaur if I don't make a switch. So I was lucky that my skill set was in demand, and I guess my network of of clients, but it was definitely a challenge. I had to do quite a lot of courses, and interestingly, in crypto, there's no real academic papers or research. Even by the time very good research is published, it's already a little bit outdated. So I realized that the best way learning is by doing. And yes, I'm really glad I did. And obviously, it's a very, very innovative space. To me, it feels like a merge between tech and finance. And every day is just so diverse. I think it definitely suits my personality very, very well.
And Odelia,
Yeah.
your story.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with Katryna. I mean, I was fascinated by the technologies around digital finance and fintech in general. And I think that it's indeed that intersection between, from one side, global economics, from the other side, more technology advancement. You have the end consumer in the middle, and you have a lot of regulation. And I think that for me, it was very interesting to see how an industry, which is amongst the most regulated around the world, which has a lot of differences in terms of structures, in terms of regions, in terms of markets, what happens when you introduce such a new technology, which basically redefines everything, right? Which enables you to regenerate and securitize assets, which enables you to reconfigure a value chain. What does it do to the more institutional player, and what does it do also to the end consumer, which sits in the middle? And I think that, as I mentioned, I've been around for 10 years, and I remember back in 2014, 2015, when this thing just started. I mean, one of the first conferences that took place at Google Campus, they literally gave away QRs with Bitcoins, by the way. So, and to see where the industry has advanced, and and back in the days we're thinking, is it a security, is it a commodity? There's so many progress, and even today, we've passed the bear market, the bull market. Still today, many of these questions still need answer, but I think that the potential that it has in terms of really redefine capital markets is phenomenal. So that is what every day in the last decade keeps me super fascinated about those things.
Yeah, I know. And Odelia, when I met you, I just realized how outstanding was your career when you first started. I was like, wow, this is a completely different road. Probably not many have taken this one. So yeah, a true honor to have you all here. So you can see different paths, but all roads take to Rome, I would say. So now in terms of lessons, if you could go back and see yourself 10, 50, 10 or 5 years behind, what would you say to that younger self? What could you have done differently? Any valuable tips that you could give the ladies that are listening us about how to establish themselves in the digital assets industry? Any tip that you think will definitely make a difference? Katryna, what do you think? What is one lesson?
Yeah, I can probably start. I mean, I started my career beginning of 2008, on the structured derivatives desk, and we were very successfully issuing notes and then very successfully winding them down after Lehman collapsed in September. So I've been through a few, different, kind of challenging times. To me, when I started, I can see if you're very young and you're a girl, again, being in the finance, especially in the banking sector at the time in 2008, banking was very, still very, very prestigious. And, everyone was dreaming to be there. And I would say the ratio of, young grads was very, very, very equalized, right? But as the more senior you would get, the more it became kind of, a gentleman's club, as I mentioned, and sometimes it's just the nature of the job. It's very fast paced. It's very, very intellectually stimulating, but also very demanding in terms of energy levels. So going back to your question, I think what really helped me at the time, and I think financial sector was already turning in that sense, so they already were running some mentorship programs. So I found a really, really good mentor. She was amazing. She was CEO of investment banking. And she actually also, rose her career through the ranks, and she would always find time for me to, we had regular catch-ups and coffee. And she was so instrumental. I really admired her because she wasn't one of those, leaders. I kind of just don't agree with the, idea of a quota for men and women. I think, I'd like to think we're in our roles because we deserve to be due to our skill set, values that we bring. It's not necessarily the gender. So for me, what was really impressive about my mentor is that she was always very collected, always in time, very matter of fact, very analytical. And she just also switched industries, which was really great because it showed she was very hardworking. But what she really did really well, you could see, even I was in meetings with her in a professional capacity, she would take ownership and generally, showcased her leadership skills by adding value. So rather than, maybe blowing her own trumpets like many men do, especially, in front office in investment banking, she wasn't aggressive in the men's world. She was just very collected, and she just was leading by example, by taking ownership of difficult tasks and proving her value. So I would say for me that was one of the most important lessons I've learned, observing her, is that it's not necessarily about what you say, but also what you do. And if you're effectively communicating, that's a balance, right? Quite often women maybe do but don't effectively communicate. It's the same as in crypto. People build but don't communicate, or communicate but don't build, right? So you need both. You need the balance of building and effectively communicating about it. And I think the same principle would probably apply to finance or career in crypto, whether you're young or experienced. We're all learning every day. Like I still feel like it's very, very fast-paced industry. So I'll stop there, but I would say, sort of observing others, maybe finding that mentor, and maybe, learning what others do well works in any industry.
Yeah, let me maybe take it now. I think that, again, I have to echo on Katryna's note. I think that crypto and digital finance is really, anyhow, financial services are extremely predominated by men. Technology industries are far dominated by men, consulting obviously as well. And on top of everything, you have the layer of crypto and digital assets, which I always see, if you look at the ratio of men, women sitting in conferences, I think in the crypto ones, it's the worst, right? So I think that anyways, looking into industries like that, which are very masculine from one side, and from the other, you're also looking at industries that are very institutional in nature, right? It takes time for the industry to move. It takes time to embrace the change. I remember when I wrote my PhD proposal, my research proposal in 2018, around the CBDC and the monetary system, and one of the professor that I reached out to told me, listen, I don't know much about crypto, but let me tell you, young lady, I don't think it's going to work. This is not the world. And of course, the highlight is the young lady. But my 2 cents was that I told him, well, I know a lot about crypto, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a thing. So my 2 cents to you would be, I mean, follow your passion and your inner drive. If you know the industry, if you've done your homework, if you feel like there's a trend coming, then you should pursue it. And I think that one of the beauties about this industry is that whilst there is, there is a playground, still there's a lot to be defined. And it's a great time to build and to design new models. And I think that now we see much more the institutional side and the regulatory side, which is looking into things much more cautiously, but also defining some rules and regulations which enable us to redevelop and to redesign. And it's a great time to build and to develop. So that would be my 2 cents here.
I think I would say on the mentor side, I didn't have a mentor I looked up to for a long time. And most of the senior women in my organization seem to be more stereotypical, I need to be more aggressive because, I need to make my presence shown type of women. And I'm quite soft-spoken in nature, so I didn't really take to that very well. And I felt like, I needed to change my ways somehow to be able to escalate the so-called corporate ladder. But after some years, I realized I do know what I'm talking about. I know some things. So I think I would say just trust what you know. And, like Katryna said with her mentor, just, you don't need to be like alpha male. Just know what you know and don't be afraid of what you don't know, especially in an industry like crypto. There's a lot that you won't know, so don't try to learn everything. I don't know if any of you experienced this as well, but when I first got into digital assets, I was so overwhelmed by the amount of information. And you try to learn everything because I think as women, we feel like, if I'm going to talk to one person in crypto, I need to read all the news outlets and know all the chains and know about liquid staking and yield farming and all that. It just gets overwhelming very easily. So take an interest. Learn about it. You don't need to know everything, because even if you do learn a lot, it's going to change. It's dynamic. So it's your chance to be part of the change. Just use what you know to help make that contribution to the industry. It's very rare. And you don't see that in banking. In banking, it's a lot more clear guidelines, colors or lines you can't color outside of. But crypto isn't like that. It's flexible. It's changing as we speak. And it's, decentralized in nature. So just enjoy that, I would say.
From mentors to adaptability, I think every single lesson you provided is pretty spot on. Adaptability, as you said, Oya, is pretty much the number one skill that any person in the industry must have. Is extremely changing even right now. We're in price discovery phase right today, so we don't know where the price is going next, because it's the first time that we jump into this territory and this price range. So it's quite interesting how we need to constantly be adapting to new trends. And talking about trends, there is a recent study that have revealed that in crypto companies or in companies in the Web3 space as well, we have a lot of management boards majorly integrated by male. Okay, and according to several studies, 94% of top executive positions are held by men. Okay, how can we, as a whole, run more strategies and initiatives to foster gender diversity and effectively reduce this gap? I would like to add something here, perhaps not only in executive positions, but also in sales teams, business development teams, in every chain or in every vertical of our ventures. How can we help decrease that gap? Which initiatives can we do on our daily basis just to change this?
I can probably have some, kind of some thoughts about it. So to me, it seems that I guess approaching it from a gender gap or, from a diversity is not necessarily the right angle. So I have 3 children. I have 2 boys and a girl. And you can already see how almost from a very, very young age, there's almost a bias that, girls do humanities and boys do STEM subjects. They're good at math and science. And I don't know whether it's, just they have such analytical mind from early age, or maybe it's just being encouraged, or maybe their get praised more. Maybe it's just an implicit bias. And again, I think that the trend follows through universities. Again, when you look at the STEM subject being even studied at universities in the UK, it's always, 2/3 of them are men. In terms of even hiring, so, at Wintermute, we obviously always have open roles. And my friend on the trading desk always says they always almost favor having an interview with a female applicant on the trading desk than with a male. And even when they give them offers, they don't take them. So recently we had 3 offers, 2 of them went to ladies and they didn't take them. And I think they probably just were scared because it's such a, the trading desk is just all men. And I would applaud that brave lady to just come and try it out, right? Like, I think the most important thing is just be brave and try it out. Kind of that's at the very beginning of your career. I think, as naturally, as you progress in your career, that's what I found, where crypto is actually much more flexible. So again, having 3 children, I think the government talks about it, but actually I would like to see more doing rather than talking. Like, I think parents in general, not just women, are not supported enough. There's not enough childcare being provided, or maybe even some kind of tax offsets for the childcare. All of that has to be sorted by the parents, whether you're a man or a woman. It's always challenging part of your career until your children are a little bit more self-sufficient. So what I would like to see is kind of more flexibility, maybe more part-time roles, maybe more kind of, job shares. Again, there's no programs that are around that. When I came back after my firm's maternity leave to the banking sector and I've asked for a job share, I was a month later, I was said, well, would you like to move to a back office role? Because we cannot have a client covering role where they call and say, hey, Katryna is not working on Fridays, call on Mondays. The trade has to happen now. The market is moving. Katryna cannot be off on a Friday. In crypto, I guess it's even more different because it's 24/7 market. So, sometimes it feels like it never stops. But I think the beauty of it is also it's very, very flexible, as Oya and Odelia said, it's possible to be, digital nomad and have flexible lifestyle. So I would say the most important thing for closing the gender gap is just ask, what do I need to get promoted, right? Or maybe what do I need to get done in order to be recognized, kind of, give me more work or give me more, responsibility. I can prove myself, because I think just asking and not doing is difficult, right? And you're just entitled. You still want to be humble and work hard, but also, ask effectively, communicate effectively about, taking that additional responsibility. To me, I think that's what women probably naturally be more lacking. We just think we will do a good job and someone will reward us, because that's what should happen, right, in a fair world. But there's a different world where a male maybe feel like for a role they might have only 20% skill set and 80% self-presentation, and they get that role and they prove there's a gap, but they close that gap. Whilst with women we might have 80% and we feel, oh no, not for me, 20% is missing, I'm not quite sure. So just being brave and maybe kind of being open to making mistakes, but also learning through them. Yeah, that will be probably my view on it.
I think there's going to be a lot of us agreeing with each other throughout the next hour, but yeah, 100% agree. So I'll start from what you said last, but just asking for things. Don't expect, even at banks who have very structured promotion programs, you spend 2 or 3 years as an analyst and then associate, whatever, and it's all very algorithmic. But even then, don't expect anything to just happen. And asking for things isn't begging for things. If you're doing a good job and you're doing a good job and everyone else knows you're doing a good job, then it's your responsibility, I would say, to take charge of the direction of your career. So just know what you want. Even if you don't know what you want, ask what the options are. So just don't expect someone else to do it for you. Just take the reins and find your direction. And the second thing I was going to agree on definitely is childcare and being a parent, which I don't know why I didn't think about this before I had kids, but if I was still working in the bank, going in at 7 a.m, leaving at 7 p.m, I would not see my kids, which, on some days I'm okay with, but there's no normalization of having children and having a career. It's not about this having it all. It's about having a balance. Now I'm very fortunate to have flexible arrangements that I can coordinate with my partner, who picks them up, who drops them off, and then log in at night when they're asleep. So it's all very blurred in terms of working hours and parenting hours, but it's a balance that works for me, and I'm fortunate enough to work for a company that lets me do that. But that should be the norm. If the job gets done, then it doesn't matter, when it gets done.
I like the fact that you mentioned this challenge that many women in banking and the traditional sector has. Well, in crypto, I guess we have the blessing of receiving that flexibility as long as we perform, right? And I do think that has completely changed the game for us, for our families, for our relationships, and it's a great time for us, right? As mothers, let's say if we wanted to spend more time with kids, now we can do it. We can perform well in our teams, but at the same time have great time with our children. And I said that this is something that 10 years ago that was not possible. And for many industries, actually, it's not possible. For ours is, which is the beauty of digital assets and Web3 as a whole. That remote way to do things. And in terms of challenges, I wanted to ask you, to all of you, is there any challenge? Perhaps there is, perhaps there's not, but a challenge that you have encountered in the digital asset space. This could be a challenge that is more related to you because you were a female, or it was just literally a challenge, a more career oriented challenge when you join. Is anything that you would like to raise that perhaps is worth sharing with the audience? I will start myself. One challenge I have or experience a lot is panels. Sometimes I feel that panels are 99% male and just one female just being the voice there. And I wish there will be more balance between both, between female and male in panels. Sometimes I feel, again, that there's no much diversity. So I'm trying to change that. Every time I go to a conference, I try to recommend more and more talented women in the space to speak. So hopefully that can change. So yeah, I have pretty much experienced that. But all of us have a role to play in changing this reality. So Katryna, Odelia, Oya, any challenge that you feel is still quite alarming? No challenges.
I think challenge is not the word I was thinking of. That's what that's why I was pondering a little bit. I think this might sound a bit perverse, but I would kind of like it to be less highlighted that I'm a woman. And I don't know if you understand what I mean by that, but it seems to be sometimes the primary thing. Oh, let's have a woman on the panel. Let's ask Oya. It's like, no, don't ask Oya because she's a woman. Ask Oya because she knows what she's talking about, kind of thing. Or, women and whatever. And I said this to the London's women group last week. I would love if we just had a panel of all women and not call it women in something, where it's just, people or experts in their field, and it's not titled women in crypto or women in finance or whatever. So yeah, that's my small mission for 2024.
Yeah, I have to agree with Oya. I mean, I always looked at it. I was never a very big feminist on that aspect, and I wish indeed we would not need to call it a women panel in order just to be us on a panel. But unfortunately, with that said, most cases we are the only women in the room. And I think to your previous question, Michaela, I mean, one side is women, how can we push ourselves forward in terms of being in more executive roles? And I think that unfortunately, there are still challenges in the society perspective because of everything that comes with it. I think that certain industries does, however, have come forward, yet others are still lacking behind, and I think it's more challenging. So I think that is one question in general, regardless of digital assets or not. I wouldn't say that I personally have encountered challenges specifically under digital finance, right? I think that every woman there are the challenges you experience when you start your journey. There are the challenges you experience when you move forward in your journey. I once met the head of BCG, the country leader, and I asked her, what's the biggest challenge that you've experienced in your career? And she said, the fact that most businesses and all the big decisions are getting closed over dinners or over drinks. And it's always, there is certain kinds of sensitivity, how you manage those as a woman. And I'm sure that every woman in a senior role has encountered those initiatives and those incidents. And I think half of it is on us, right? How do we navigate that and how firm we come in our path? But from the other side, again, I think that society is moving forward, but not not on the pace that we would like it to move forward.
Actually, it's interesting because as you said, Odelia, that's a fine line, and all of us have experienced that. And it's a shame that we do have sometimes, I would say, to feel uncomfortable sometimes to close business after hours, or like, in what I mean by that is a fine line that we need to deal as women, a female, and I didn't want to bring that point in the webinar, but I have felt it before. And slowly we are getting more and more confident to go through those phases, but I do think that it's not related also to digital assets. It could be related to any industry, and everyone has unique ways to deal with that. Apart from this point, I have someone in the audience asking one interesting question. Perhaps, Oya, you would like to comment on this? I love your perspective. Before the person says, how we avoid people perception that women have unique style to succeed in this business. So let me repeat: how can we avoid, or how can we respond to people that says that women have unique ways to do business in the digital asset space? What would you say to that?
Well, I think each individual has a unique way to do business. I'm sure the way I go about sales isn't the same as Katryna or Odelia would have done. So I don't think it's something to avoid. I think it's something to embrace, that if you have a unique style that works, it doesn't need to be, oh, let's go out for golf and then talk about football at a pub over a pint or whatever. It can be whatever style you feel works. And I think I would say just don't try to pigeonhole yourself into what you think is a more acceptable or what the norm is in terms of doing business, because it's a new industry that there isn't a proven method that works for everything. So you just try and see what works.
Let me chime in, if I may. I think and take a slightly different approach. I agree, of course. I think every individual has a very unique approach of its own. There was recently a study about VCs and about founders. And I think that one of the uniqueness around women is that, we're much more detailed. We even have, in most cases, much more cautious predictions. And there was a study that basically did a comparison between a women CEO founder and between a man, speaking to their investors and showing their predictions towards, FY XYZ. Both of them were right. Both of them provided very accurate figures, but the differences indeed were there. So you say none of them is lying, yet always, I won't say always, but based on that specific research, male founders' predictions were always far more overreaching, I would say, than the women ones, which are always, much more grounded and much more cautious. And I think that, again, not being too stereotypical also to the other side, I think about the statements that we provide and making sure that indeed we can deliver. And if our KPI said X, then we will always provide that specific KPIs, not stretching it too much. And I think it's something that maybe within volatile markets such as the ones that we're operating in, that could be a very good thing, right? Because that the predictions might be closer to reality. Again, of course, there's a wider context to be taken into consideration, but I think that is one highlight I would mention as in favorable of the women nature.
I would like to say, actually, Michaela, going back to your first question, because I felt like I wasn't long enough in the industry to contribute on the challenge, but I actually found my challenge is, or maybe it's just in my personality, or maybe even more in my background, is that actually I'm called too TradFi, or maybe too aggressive. What I found in crypto, everyone is nicey. Like I couldn't imagine, people just being nice consistently on every chat, every email, sort of informal, but sort of in a very, very endearing way. For me, that was actually quite eye-opening. And having met some of the most amazing founders of multi-billion projects, they were just so humble and unassuming. For me, it was a refreshing way, because I was used to a very kind of male-dominated way of doing business, closing deal, not beating around the bush, and I kind of had to learn my ways. And going back to the perspective that Oya and Odelia brought up, I was reading maybe even similar studies that only 3% of female founders actually get funding compared to 97, which is huge, right? If you think about it. And to me, it speaks about the VCs, right? It's a reflection on the VCs being possibly quite often else and very male dominated, right? There's not many women VCs. We probably can name 5 names on our hand. So to me, it seems that maybe the approach is not necessarily a woman or a man. It's more kind of their neural diversity, right? How we approach problems, how we solve them. As Odelia said, maybe our way of thinking is kind of more risk averse, meaning being more cautious with our predictions, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't contribute longer term, right? So, again, crypto being very young industry, again, my challenge was when I was going to all the panels, I just couldn't believe when I was speaking the way some women were, dressed. Like, I couldn't understand as a founder, other they're, accompanying someone, other they're just, a student. So to me, again, it was very difficult to kind of initially to figure out, again, going to like a big room to figure out who is who. And again, the dress code, obviously very different, right? It's very, very informal. But it was a good wake-up call for me to actually maybe, work on my bias and realize a person standing in the corner, possibly with a neurodiversity, maybe very shy or very autistic, can be the founder of the most amazing project ever built for the last 10, 15 years. And that's where I had to adjust. So it's not necessarily a female thing, it's more kind of what we bring to the table in terms of our backgrounds and experiences. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a female perspective.
Well, I think we covered quite a lot on this question. Actually, there's another question that also says, how do we deal with dress codes in conferences? But I think Katryna already covered that one. So I would say as to before we wrap up, what final advice, few words would you like to say to each person that is listening here to us? And again, this could be an advice, it could be a motivational quote, whichever you prefer.
I think I would, and I will preface this by saying it took me 15 years to get here. So, don't beat yourself up if it's not that stage for you yet. But I would say just be confident in what you know. I used to stress a lot about what I didn't know, and I felt like I always knew less than the people I was in the room with. And I don't know if that comes from, maybe some of it comes from being a woman, maybe some of it comes from my personality, probably more the latter. But just don't let things you're not familiar with or the unknown overwhelm your strengths. So you'll be good at some things, you won't be as good at other things, but you can add value with the things you're good at. So I would say, don't let the rest just detract from that.
Let me maybe go next. I think that today's world is so interdisciplinary, and there's so many different paths and so many different journeys to get into a specific position or industry or company. And I think that now more than ever, regardless of what you've studied, regardless of how you define yourself, if there's something that you find interesting, then you can invest whichever resources and energy you have to learn it, to study it, and to find your path to get there. So, and I say it as an encouragement because many people are looking at the digital finance, fintech and finance in general, and are saying, I don't come from finance, I don't have investment banker background, then I should step back. And I think on the contrary, I think that is specifically in these times where everything is almost being redesigned, new models are coming, new applications, new ventures, new product. Everything is becoming part of, the platformification of financial services, the gamification of everything. It is such an exciting time. And I think really, if you have a passion within you, do not hesitate to just pursue it. Take the relevant time again to study it and pursue your dreams.
I would say, again, echoing as we said, yes, I think first one I was going to say, like, be bold, be brave, be brilliant. Like, it's very important to play to your strengths. So for instance, I know I'm not a person of detail, so I should not be reviewing legal agreements, be a lawyer. So that's not my strength, but I'm good at other things. So maybe negotiations, or other important skills. Number two, I agree with Odelia. I think it's also important to be curious. Like, I think it's proven that all the best companies were built built not because the founders were chasing money, but because they were chasing adding value. How can they do something different or better or more efficiently, something that people will need, right? So to me, it seems like if you can look at a problem, like crypto is still so innovative, you can find any problem and solve it better, or it's not a saturated industry at all, right? It's like literally uncharted territory. So to me, I think there is space for any skill set, any, curious mind to find a problem and find a solution to it. And the success will follow naturally. Because quite often what happens is kind of you have to also, I guess, grind. That's what crypto is about, right? Like we, see a lot of founders where the funnel is so wide and then it just only the toughest will survive. And sometimes they survive because maybe they finish, a very good degree and there is, a bias that they come from Ivy League and they can do really beautiful decks, right? And can have, successful sort of or enough running money to achieve those dreams. But quite often it's also about kind of keep going and grinding and doing it every day. So to me it seems like the curiosity and the intellect are with kind of hard work is what brings people to to that kind of pedestal finish, or even if they don't achieve what they want, they can always pivot. Like again, even when we invest, we look quite often at seed, pre-seed, it's usually the founders, right? So you literally only can look at the founders, look at the track record, look at the idea, look at its, product market fit, but there's nothing else. There's even no, financial projections yet. They don't even have revenue, right? So quite often it's actually, people dealing with people and who do you trust? So I think it's about, learning to kind of have that someone trusting you. I think that's very, very important. And that comes with like a great idea, but also the delivery. So the two things are important.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the three of you for those incredible advices and lessons and wrapping up this webinar marvelously. I would like to say, or would like to give a heads up on how can people connect with you? What is the best way to get in touch with each of you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Telegram? If you perhaps want to drop those details, that would be great. Oya, how can people connect with you?
LinkedIn or Telegram. I'll drop my LinkedIn can I drop it in the chat?
Yep. Yeah, you can.
I don't think there's another person with my name, so if you if you search for me on LinkedIn, you'll find me.
Yeah. Katryna, same. Odelia?
Yeah, same.
Great. Well, that being said, we do need to draw the curtains of this very inspiring webinar celebrating International Women's Day. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the three of you for your time. Personally, I do think that they are my inspiration and inspiration of many female in the space. So this was very insightful for everyone that was listening to you. Hopefully we can do this again next year. Bigger and better. It's great so far to be sharing the space with you, and hopefully we can keep learning from your own journeys, from your own initiatives. For anyone that does not follow any of my three fellow speakers on LinkedIn, please do go ahead and follow them. They are exceptional. They're doing marvelous things in every single vertical in the industry. So highly recommend it. Highly recommend to follow them all. And yeah, that's it on behalf of Binance Institutional. Thank you for being here. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.